What's up, guys? I'm Naya and I'm from India. My mom raised me all by herself and she didn't have it easy. We were poor. Very poor. She worked as a maid for this super rich family, and when I was 8 years old, I begged my mom to let me work with her too so we could earn extra money. Please, Mom, I want to help. Oh, I don't know. Please. Oh, okay, honey. Thank you. Yay! I was excited, but I didn't really understand how terrible my mom's work was. When we arrived, I was so shocked by how massive the house was. It was a mansion, all white and pristine like a palace. We didn't get to enter through the front since we were considered inferior. So we got a small back entry where we got changed into our uniforms and started our tasks for the day. My mom and I were in the living room cleaning up. I was only 8 years old, so I was pretty clumsy, and I accidentally knocked over a glass of orange juice that was on the table, staining the fluffy white carpet. Naya! I'm sorry, Mama. Oh, it's okay, sweetie. I'll clean this up. While my mom scrubbed frantically, another woman walked into the room. I couldn't stop staring at her. My mom had only told me stories about this woman, but seeing her in person was a whole other experience. She was the wife of the household. She had the tightest skin I'd ever seen. It was stretched out like rice paper through years of Botox and surgery. She wore a white dress as if she was going to the Oscars instead of just relaxing at home, with a giant diamond necklace. She approached us, and when she spotted the stain, she shrieked like a crow.
Oh my God, you imbecile!
My mom quickly stood up at attention. I'm sorry, Mrs. Singh. I'll clean this up right away.
Are you kidding? The stain will never come out.
I promise it will. Just give me time to...
Don't interrupt me, you idiot!
Mrs. Singh raised her hand and backhanded my mom right across the cheek. At that point, I lost it. You leave my mama alone! I launched myself at Mrs. Singh and bit her on the leg. She screamed and raised her hands as if to hit me too, when suddenly a man walked into the room. He caught Mrs. Singh's hand mid-air and pulled her away. What is going on here? It was Mr. Singh, the husband of the household. He had on a business suit and it seemed like he was about to leave for work. Mr. Singh, please, we accidentally spilled some juice on the carpet, but I can get the stain out. Seriously, Brenda? This is what you're screaming about?
But...
Ella, Naya, I'm so sorry for my wife's behavior. Please, leave. I'll handle this. My mom and I were still shaken from Mrs. Singh's behavior, but I was glad Mr. Singh was there to handle it all. The next day, when we received our list of tasks for the day, Mom groaned. She had been assigned all the bathroom duties, the most disgusting and hardest tasks of the house. We knew Mrs. Singh was the one behind it. This was her way of punishing my mom. While my mom headed to the bathroom, I went to the garden where I was supposed to clear out the weeds. The sun was boiling, and I actually felt like my skin was melting off my bones. I pulled out weed after weed after weed, wondering how my mom was doing, when suddenly I heard a splash behind me. Some boy had just jumped into the pool. The Singhs didn't have a son, so I was curious who this strange boy was. Hey, you! The boy was talking to me. What? Come in and swim. I can't. I have to clean up this garden. Oh, come on. Don't be such a party pooper. But The boy splashed some water at me. I gasped. Hey, stop it! Come in! Suddenly, the boy leapt out of the water and pulled me in. Whoa! No! We fell into the pool. Water splashed everywhere and I was drenched. When we resurfaced, the boy introduced himself. I'm Ramesh. I couldn't help it. I should have been mad, but I started laughing. Nice to meet you, Ramesh. I'm Naya.
What is going on here?
We turned suddenly. Mrs. Singh was there, and she looked as red as the planet Mars. Aw, come on, Auntie. We're just having fun.
Ramesh, come out this second.
Ramesh smiled apologetically at me, then hopped out of the pool. As they left, Mrs. Singh sent me a look as sharp as daggers. I sighed, climbed out of the pool, and got changed. Unknown to Ramesh, his aunt later came back to tell me to do double the original tasks I had for that day. Life wasn't too bad, though. Ramesh and I hung out all the time, and usually it was just Ramesh tagging along while I did work. He often came to his aunt and uncle's house on weekends or for school breaks, and that way we got to see each other a lot. Mrs. Singh hated seeing us together, though, but usually we managed to keep it a secret. Life was getting better, until one day it all came crashing down. My mom and I were scrubbing the floor when suddenly I saw Mom start to close her eyes. Mom? Mom collapsed to the floor, unconscious. Mom! I screamed for help as I tried to wake my mom up. Eventually, some of the other maids and servants arrived. Then Mr. Singh appeared. My mom, you have to help. She just collapsed. Please. Don't worry, Naya. She'll be all right. Then, like some sort of prince, Mr. Singh lifted my mom into his arms and carried her away. There was something about the look on his face when he cradled my mom that made me curious, but I was too worried to think about it too much. At the hospital, the doctors told us Mom was overstressed and needed to rest for a few days. By this point, my mom was awake, and when she heard the doctors say this, she immediately protested. No, I have to work, I have to earn money. If we don't, we won't be able to eat, pay rent, Ella. Mr. Singh held my mom's hand. Everything will be okay. You can stay in our spare bedroom while you rest. But Naya? Naya can stay with us too. Don't worry, I'll still pay for the days you miss while you rest.
Sweetie, is that really a good idea?
Brenda, not now. Mrs. Singh bit her lip. I could tell she hated the idea of my mom living in the same house as her, even though they had over 10 spare bedrooms. But I'll be honest, if my husband had spoken and touched a woman the way Mr. Singh touched my mom, I would have been concerned too. After a while, the doctors wanted to run some more tests on my mom, so we all had to leave. As I walked out, Ramesh was there waiting for me. We stood there staring at each other for a while. Then, Ramesh offered a hug. We embraced each other, and I couldn't hold it in anymore. I let go, sobbing on his shoulder. Throughout Mom's recovery period, Ramesh was there for me the whole time. I never could have gotten through it without him. Years passed, and my mom was much better. Mr. Singh only allowed her to work 4 days a week instead of 7, while I picked up more hours, so now I became the main source of income for our family. One day, when I was 15, I entered my mom's room to give her some food, but her bed was empty. She's probably at the store. I forgot all about it and went to Mr. and Mrs. Singh's bedroom because I was supposed to mop the floors there. But when I entered, I got the shock of my life. Sitting on the bed, making out like some sort of Hollywood movie couple, was Mr. Singh and my mom. Oh my God! They broke apart and looked at me in alarm. Naya, I can explain.
What the heck?
My heart dropped. Mrs. Singh was behind me looking through the doorway, and when she spotted Mom and her husband, she screamed until it felt like the whole house was shaking.
Are you kidding? You're cheating on me with the maid?
Honey, look,
Yes, go on, explain yourself. That's it. You.
Mrs. Singh pointed at my mom.
You're fired, and you can bring your bratty daughter with you.
I looked at Mr. Singh, expecting him to step in and do something, but he just looked away. I scoffed. Come on, Mom, we don't need them. Mom sighed sadly, and we packed our things up and left. As it turned out, we really did need them. No one would hire us again after that, and my guess is that Mrs. Singh contacted everyone she could and banned them from hiring us, ruining our reputations. My mom and I became homeless and lived under a bridge with the other homeless people. One night, when we were getting ready for bed on our cardboard sheets, we heard a commotion down the other end of the bridge. Quickly, we rushed over to see what was happening, and I was surprised to see Ramesh there. Hey, get off! One of the homeless people was trying to steal his watch. I rushed over and stepped between them. He's with me. The man recognized me and backed away. I dragged Ramesh over to our little nook and sat him down. What are you doing here? It's not safe. I had to come see you. I have an offer for you. An offer? I want you and your mom to come work for my family. It's on the other side of town, but it's good money and we'll treat you kindly, unlike my auntie. But your parents, are you sure? Don't worry, my parents hate auntie. They would love to have you. Oh, Ramesh, thank you. I hugged him, and the next day we got started right away. Turns out Ramesh was just as rich as his aunt and uncle. His house wasn't as big as theirs, but it was still absurdly enormous with a giant swimming pool and a garden as big as a national park. While my mom got started cleaning the floors of the bedrooms, Ramesh told me he had a special task for me in his room. When we arrived, he shut the door and looked at me mischievously. Surprise! You don't have to do any work. What? I told my parents that you can be my tutor so you can work and earn money here without doing any actual work. Wow, Ramesh, that's so nice of you, but why would you do that for me? Ramesh blushed. Well, you see, actually, I really like you. Electricity shot through my heart. Oh, wow, we stood there for a bit, unsure what to do, but then I took a deep breath and just went for it. I kissed Ramesh, and pretty soon we held onto each other dearly. But then suddenly the door opened and my mom walked in, her broom in hand. Oh! My mom froze. Ignore me. She left quickly and shut the door. Ramesh and I grinned sheepishly at each other. It looked like life was good again. The next day, Ramesh's family was having dinner at his house. This time, I actually had to do some work, and me and my mom were in charge of serving the guests. The dinner bell rang, and we emerged from the kitchen with the dinner. As we handed each guest their plates, I looked up in alarm as Mr. and Mrs. Singh were there. Mr. Singh was staring at my mom while my mom tried to avoid his eye contact, and Mrs. Singh was staring at her husband. Eventually, Mom went to give Mrs. Singh her meal, when suddenly, Mrs. Singh jutted out her elbow, hitting my mom and causing the tray of meals to fall to the floor. Mr. Singh had a lobster on his shoulder. He quickly flicked it off and tried to help my mom. Please stop, I don't need your help. Mr. Singh hesitated, then got back in a seat while Mom and I cleared it all up. When we left, I could see Mrs. Singh sniggering at my mom. It was so unfair. Later, for dessert, my mom gave everyone their food. Mrs. Singh took one bite of her cake, then she started coughing uncontrollably. Are there nuts in here? There shouldn't be. Mrs. Singh collapsed to the floor and started choking. We called an ambulance, and luckily Ramesh's mom had a peanut allergy injection on hand. Thankfully, Mrs. Singh regained consciousness and the swelling died down, but as soon as she was okay, she looked at my mom.
You're going to jail for this.
What?
You tried to kill me.
While murmurs spread through the dinner table, Ramesh took me and Mom away to the kitchen. Ramesh, Mom didn't do it. She would never. I know. Look, there's something I have to tell you. Earlier on, when everyone was distracted, I saw Mr. Singh head into the kitchen. I was curious what he was going to do, so I followed him, and you'll never believe what I saw. He spiked Mrs. Singh's cake with some peanuts. Oh my God. You don't think... Did he do it on purpose? Was he really trying to kill his own wife? Maybe. He might have done it so he could get her out of the way and, I don't know, maybe get back with your mom? We have to tell Mrs. Singh so she doesn't sue my mom. No, we can't. What? But why? I don't want to get Amar into trouble. But Mom, you're being falsely accused of murder. But no, I'm dealing with this now. I burst into the dining room and stood up on the table. I explained everything to the whole audience. Ramesh stood up on the table too and confirmed my case. Everyone was so shocked, but no one was more shocked than Mrs. Singh. She took one look at her husband, then slapped him across the face.
You're lucky I love money too much to divorce you.
Mrs. Singh turned to my mom.
Ella, look, I'm so sorry. I know I've been hard on you. You're a kind woman and you've been nothing but accepting of me. Can you forgive me?
My mom hesitated, but then she smiled. Of course. I sighed with relief. Ramesh grinned and I winked at him. It looked like things would get better after all.